Hey there. Today I want to talk a little bit about employee engagement and what that means and what it doesn't mean and what you can do about it. So I'll be focusing on Gallup and how they define it, the tools they use, and some of the research that they've done, because I found Gallup to be the most effective in terms of providing the tools and the information and resources to really drive employee engagement. In particular, Gallup Strengths is something I've relied on and quite frequently run in my organizations. So Gallup defines engagement as the involvement and enthusiasm of employees in the workplace. And that's a pretty good definition. But in my experience, I like to drive it home a little bit more by saying, if you've ever noticed employees that just go that extra mile, that are constantly bringing something to the table that says, hey, I've noticed this just outside of my area of ownership. It's a problem for our customers. It's a problem for the team. Here's some ideas that I think we should pursue to fix it or to make things better. That's a pretty engaged employee. If you've noticed other employees that kind of fly under the radar, get their job done, get out, punch the clock right at 5 o'clock. And by the way, nothing against working an honest day and checking out as soon as your shift is over. But I'm talking about folks that kind of twiddle their thumbs, watch the clock, and as soon as it hits that last minute, they're out. Those are disengaged employees, but they're not the worst kind of disengaged employees. There's actually a third type of disengaged employee. Again, talking about the way Gallup defines it. This third group is the actively disengaged. These are folks that are resentful of the workplace. They're resentful that they have to show up, that they have to do this job. They're in no way enthusiastic or engaged in this workplace. They would rather do their job as little as possible. And in fact, if they could let some things slip and prove to management that their way was better at some point along the way and watch things fail, they would let that happen. This is the worst part of employee engagement. Gallup tells us through their research that only about 35% of employees in the United States are engaged. That's 35% of employees that are actively looking to progress their company, their role, their team in the marketplace. I would argue that if everybody showed up to work and just did their job, pure and simple, did their job and went home, you could still get beaten very easily by most competitors. And the reason is that engaged employees, those that you hook, that you get that sense of ownership from, those that are very enthusiastic about the job they're doing, they're going to bring solutions to you. They're going to bring innovations to you. And that's exactly what you want and what I love to drive in my organization. So let's talk about the building blocks of engagement. Now, Gallup will tell you there are 12 angles or 12 components. And it's great. That's true. And I, in going through each of their 12, you see value in every one of them. But there's two primary, and I would argue a third, that you can lean on to get a really big head start in driving employee engagement in your organization. The number one, and I talked about this in a different video a little bit, is I know what's expected of me in my role. If your team can answer that every single day, every single week, you've got a big head start. Expectations are everything. If you've ever walked into a one-on-one with your boss or a review and they said, you know what, this was okay and that was good, but what I didn't see you doing was X, Y, Z. And you had no idea that was even on the radar, that you had no idea that was something that you should be even thinking about. That's a problem. You know how that feels. It's a sinking feeling of, I thought I was doing something well. I was really aiming at this. And all of a sudden, this other thing got lopped on me. And I've been coached that I'm not doing well because suddenly I'm supposed to be doing this and I had no idea. Expectations are incredibly important for your team. And we take them for granted. I came into an organization in the not too distant past and just started asking people, hey, tell me about your expectations. What's expected? And you get some good answers. And a lot of people say, you know, this, that, and the other is expected. And you ask the bosses, the managers, what's expected of their team. And sometimes it matches. A lot of times it doesn't. And that's just the reality of most workplaces when you don't focus on getting these fundamentals right. So each one-on-one, each monthly business review, make sure you and your team are on the exact same page about what's expected of them in their role. Document it, go back to it often. People forget. People drift a bit from their core goals and what they thought was going on. So make sure that you hit that home as often as you can. What's expected in your role? The second question to get to the heart of engagement is, do you have the tools and resources necessary to do your job well? If your team cannot answer an affirmative to this question, you have a problem. Now, tools and resources could be software, could be equipment, could be help, could be coaching. There's a number of things it could be, and you have to dive into these things. But at the end of the day, does your team feel like they're appropriately resourced to meet the high expectations that you've been clear on in part one? So as a manager, as a leader, watch out for how your team is resourced and make sure that you have a good finger on the pulse as to what they think they need in order to do their job well. There are times when your people may think they need something else, but they just haven't been coached about your expectations on how they should go about doing that and what they really need. And by having that rich conversation, you can straighten up that perception, and out of it, you get a much higher engaged employee. Now, focus on those first two and you will get way ahead of the curve in terms of driving employee engagement in your organization. But there is a third question, which is, I have the opportunity to do what I'm great at every day at work. If you have people that know exactly what's expected of them in their role, they have the tools and resources needed to do their job, and they have the chance to do what they're great at every day of the workplace, you have an engaged employee, or you will very soon. That ability to do what you're good at, that's a perfect world scenario. Sometimes you come into work and you have to do some things, you're not great at it, but you got to get them done. That's going to happen. By and large, you should have your team focused on things that they're great at more often than not, the majority of their role. I've had organizations where I spent the time to go through the Gallup strengths, do the top 5, top 10, top 34 strengths report, work on that with the team, understand what it means, have them understand about themselves, what is great and what they're great at, what their top themes of talent are. When you learn what your team's great at through the Gallup strengths exercise, through those reports, and you can lean on those strengths more and more in customizing their role just a little bit for each leader, for each employee, you can get so much more happiness out of them and so much more productivity. Engagement is tied to everything from absenteeism to customer loyalty to turnover. Engagement matters a ton. So every bit that you can drive in terms of engagement will pay off in the long term for your organization. You just have to have that long-term people first view with your team. I've had teams where take the skill of a ranger, for example, how things are arranged on a board, how tasks are arranged, how goals are arranged. If you dive into the arranger strength or theme of talent in Gallup, you can end up finding a task that an arranger, somebody that leads with a ranger in their top 5 is really particularly great at. You hand them that task and all of a sudden you see them light up. You see an amazing amount of productivity. And that's just one small example. There are 34 themes of talent. One of mine is competition. You put me in a competition, I absolutely love it. I relish the opportunity to win and challenge. Other people, you put them in a competition, they shut down. That is not what they want out of their career. So knowing your strengths of your team, knowing the strengths of individuals in your organization will let you assign work or make sure that they are in a role that they can be great at every single day. That's kind of the overview of engagement. It makes a huge difference. You got to focus on your team, you got to know them, and you got to be willing to ask these questions. And what's more, you got to be willing to take action if you find out that they just don't quite get the expectations of them or they don't have the tools and resources needed to do their job. If you can focus on that, you can focus on those questions as a start, you'll be way ahead of the game and you'll see your team grow. Thanks for listening.